the sickening feeling that many people get out of the first past the post system and the coalition governments and the corruption and of course the notes for vote, whatever. This gives us tremendous opportunity. Post 2009 there is tremendous fear of even more fractured coalition. The unspoken fear in the country is even the kind of cohesion that we found so far may elude us in the coming years. And it will almost certainly elude us. Increasingly in many states, because of the caste-based politics that Ms. Ranjitha has talked about, many small parties are emerging with local clout without any kind of overall credibility and yet electoral presence, and therefore even in states which earlier had stable governments, we now see an increasing specter of unstable and unethical coalitions. I'm a great fan of coalitions. I believe that stability for stability's sake is no good at all. Stability of the graveyard sometimes is more dangerous than instability. But unethical coalitions and instability mandated by money power is a very dangerous thing, and that's increasingly happening in the country, and it's more likely to happen in the future. Therefore, I believe there is now a desperate need for the major parties themselves to switch or accept that they are so bound by their own inertia, by business as usual, that they refuse to look at that once they're entrenched in power. Once they're out of power, they're powerless to do anything about it. But I think this vicious cycle must stop. My appeal to you, Mr. Speaker, is this is something that is eminently doable. Recall will not work for the reasons Dr. Tharoor mentioned. In a plural society, it's easy to join hands on caste and other grounds to defeat anybody. And in a country where people are perpetually angry and therefore they want to throw the bums out, the one dominant feeling in the country, except a few pockets of India, is somehow destroy the government of the day, somehow teach them a lesson, somehow send them out. In that prevailing climate, recall appears very nice, but it's not a very elegant solution. It becomes chaotic, it becomes extremely destabilizing, it becomes dysfunctional. Theoretically sound, I have no quarrel with that, but we must recognize the realities of Indian society and politics. And therefore, I don't think there are any technical fixes. I don't think it's a problem that can be solved by training. We require training, no question. I don't think it's a problem that can be solved by another typical middle-class fashion statement that if only there are educational qualifications for members of parliament, as if members of parliament are uneducated. The truth is, 85% of them have degrees. And in a country like India, I don't think degree really matters. If a degree really is made a prerequisite, another 15% will definitely get degrees. That's not a big issue. It doesn't change India. The truth is, the current electoral system does not allow space for decent elements to enter politics unless you are the son and daughter of an existing politician, unless you made tons of money, very often illegitimately, sometimes could even be legitimate but unaccounted, and unless you are a criminal. And therefore, bemoaning that politicians are behaving the way they're behaving doesn't really solve a problem. I think we have to look at the electoral system. And one last word, Mr. Speaker, sir, we could have hopefully a more meaningful dialogue rather than this monologue. I'm ashamed of this monologue. The party system. Ms. Ranjitha talked about how the party leaders egg them on. Now, if she persistently disobeys her leaders, and in fact, if what she said today is revealed in public, I fear for her political future. There is a realistic chance that she will not be renominated if she is such a rebel in the party. Now, no sane country can allow our best material to be at the mercy of the political leaders, often unelected, anointed, and sometimes anointed by succession, hereditary succession. It's a disgrace to this country. We must, and I passionately believe this, unless you transform political parties, you cannot transform politics of India. Political parties may not be mentioned in the Constitution except in the 10th schedule, but political parties are overwhelming reality. They determine the shape of events. It doesn't matter what you discuss and I discuss in Parliament, frankly. All it matters is 10 people in Parliament, the leaders, they must be convinced. The 2003 law incidentally came about not because Parliament deliberated, or even understood, I dare say, because 10 key people of India, they understood it was in their best interest. They did it. The big changes in India never happened because the Parliament deliberated. I mean no disrespect to India. That's the way we function. We are almost a lawyer jirga. And after the 10th schedule, we actually became a lawyer jirga. It's no longer of any consequence what you discussed there. You have to raise your hands or else you're disqualified. Now, I can understand the 10th schedule, and I'm a great fan of anti-defection provisions. I'm fully in agreement with that. I can understand those provisions being applied when the confidence or no confidence motion is in vogue, or the finance bills, or are the ones debated because the government survival depends on that. But for a Muslim women's bill, for an ordinary bill of parliament, for a nuclear agreement, for something else, how can the parliament function? What is the purpose of the deliberations? We have now constrained too much because we have no faith in our parliamentarians. The party leaders use that very skillfully to tighten the grip over the party members, those in parliament and outside, those in legislation outside. We have to look at 10th schedule. Make members of parliament free people who can speak out honestly, even against their own leadership and their views if necessary, except that they should not have the power to undo the mandate of the people. They cannot bring down a government without the sanction of the party or the people themselves. Except that for that one injunction, the members of parliament and legislature, we must give them due respect. One last word, Mr. Speaker. I entirely endorse the committee system, and you mentioned quite rightly that the committees work pretty well. But the committees are not empowered in India. Woodrow Wilson said long ago that Congress in session is Congress on exhibition. Congress in committees is Congress at work, and that's true with our parliament too. But because the committees are not empowered, not adequately empowered, while the committees do extremely valuable work, it is not finding expression in terms of the parliament's overall output. Nor do the members of parliament feel that they have a sense of satisfaction in doing an outstanding job.
Empowerment would help.
Sir, and in that,
would empowerment help, or all the vices will come into the system?
Sir, I am a great believer in human nature. I believe if you design a system well, give incentives, the best in the human beings will come. After all, our first generation leadership in this country after independence was absolutely unmatched in the world. We are capable of that, and you are a standing testimony to that. So I have no reason to disbelieve that the best will come to the fore if only we create the right conditions. Now, frankly, to be a good member of parliament today, sir, what is the incentive? You get elected after enormous hardship, and in this wretched system, after spending tons of money, you're asked to raise your hands. Occasionally you can speak out. Rarely a speaker like you may pat an MP on the shoulder and say you've done a good job. Otherwise, where is the public esteem? Where is the opportunity to shape events for a member of parliament? Unless you empower the committees, you tell them that you can't vote against your party. You tell them you can't interfere in the executive branch of government because that is no-no. That is improper. You can't telephone to the Thanadar and tell him that, look, release so-and-so, or interfere in a contract for a commission or a tender or whatever, or a transfer of an official. What does the member of parliament or an MLA do? It's all nice for us to say, you should not do this and that. And I'm one of those keep saying, remove the 2 crore rupees for MPs each year. It's fundamentally wrong. All this is true. But what is a legitimate space for a member of parliament in this country? Or an MLA in this country? If you don't have a legitimate space, if there is vacuum, what happens? Power abhors vacuum. Abuse of power becomes endemic. Therefore, empower them, not only in demand for grants, but also in all public policy matters, in overseeing legislation and its implementation. You have the 1995 law, Delhi Rent Control Act, enacted by the Parliament of this country. Until today, the executive branch of government, despite several successive prime ministers and governments, did not see it fit to implement that law. The law is simply not implemented by the guise of not creating the rules. What kind of a system is this? What self-esteem can a member of parliament have? The parliament has a duty and a right to haul up the executive and say, look, why did you not do it? I want you to do it, and so and so did. That's the will of the parliament. It's violated by the executive branch of government. Subordinate relation is an excuse to undermine the parliament. Similarly, the key appointments in the country, let there be a process of confirmation by the parliament, or the appointments are suggested by the government, let there be a public hearing. Let there be a confirmation by the members of parliament. Of course, there will be a lot of mess. It will not be worse than today. In my state, in the past 6 months, an honest official was transferred 5 times. There's no point pretending what's happening today is wonderful. It's rotten. Let it come out. Let people debate and discuss. Let members of parliament, sit assemblies, let them have the opportunity to question this. And there'll be decent people to change this. Then parliament becomes attractive. Assembly becomes attractive. You make it unattractive except by abuse of power. You make honesty incompatible with survival in public life. And then we lament that good people don't come in. Why should Mr. Narayana Murthy come into politics? Unless he's insane. In this country, we created such conditions. Some of us are insane. That's why
him to come, he is not insane. Even then I want him to...
No, Mr. Speaker, that's the point I'm making. Many of us who are now into politics, I'm into politics now and you're into it for the past 40 years, blemishless record,